When it comes to railroad preservation, we all too often ponder the question, what if? What if this engine had been restored? What if these engines had run to this city and double-headed? What if I had studied more in college instead of filming trains so much? Many times, it's things in life that come close to happening. These flights of fancy are sometimes undone by a timing of fate, an unexpected hiccup, or simply an idea that seemed too crazy to ever happen. Railroad preservation is not immune to this. With the many locomotives running today and in the past, potential candidates, and sometimes entire events that nearly happened, we speculate what could have been. Maybe there's the timeline where these events happened, but imagination can only take us so far. Today, we go one step further. We have the technology of recreating events in train simulators. We finally answer the steam excursion what-ifs that came incredibly close to happening in our current reality. The year is 1994, and the Atlanta chapter of the National Railway Historical Society is hosting the annual NRHS convention. For this event, as then was typical in the eastern half of the country, Norfolk Southern was a primary host. Longtime representative Norfolk and Western 611 was a main feature of the event. Participating as well, coming all the way from St. Louis, was Frisco 482-1522. The two engines led a double-header to Atlanta from Birmingham. The two would double-head a return trip from Macon, and the event would conclude with another double-header of the two engines heading north to Chattanooga. The what-if, though? Southern Railway 4501 was intended to be a major part of the event. The Mikado, still dressed in its famous Southern green and gold, would have led a special out of Lula with assistance, and then led the finale triple-header north. Early in the 1994 season, the 4501 would have to call out due to some maintenance woes. Any other time, an NS Steam regular missing out on an event would have just been unfortunate. But as the Steam program would be cancelled by the end of 1994, we can't help but wonder. Now, the records show that 4501 would have actually returned to Atlanta on a round trip, while 1522 and 611 would have continued north as originally intended. But as this is all hypothetical, another event that fascinates us is the Steamtown Grand Opening in 1995. A grand gathering of steam to showcase America's railroads in Scranton, Pennsylvania at the Steamtown National Historic Site. Joining Steamtown's own 3 steam engines were several invited guests that arrived by rail. 2 of them arrived from relatively local venues, but the biggest engine, Milwaukee Road 261, was brought in all the way from Minneapolis, Minnesota for the event. Had things gone differently, though, it would not have been the only large steam engine to show up. Dropping out of the event at the last second was Pierre Marquette 284-1225. This Berkshire would have actually double-headed with the 261 for the trip to Pennsylvania. Originally, the 2 engines were to meet in Michigan and then double-head through Canada to New York before continuing south to Scranton. However, the move was cancelled at about the last minute with clearance issues cited. The 261, which was already in Chicago when the decision went down, found an alternative by taking CSX to Pennsylvania and continuing to New York on Buffalo and Pittsburgh. A last-second donation made this possible for the 261, but it did not come through for the 1225. Again, we wonder. Two streamliners double-headed on the main line? Hard to believe, but we know it nearly happened. The year is 1996, and Southern Pacific 4449, aka the Daylight, is heading north from its home base in Portland, Oregon, to Vancouver, British Columbia for a week-long special excursion. 2 days north via Burlington Northern Santa Fe to Seattle and into Canada, a 3-day layover, and 2 days to return, just in time for the Portland Rail Fair 1996. This event celebrated the 100th anniversary of Union Station's opening. This marked the 4449's first mainline trip in several years, but it was a noticeably short train for such an outing. Things make a bit more sense when you learn that this event was meant to bring in another locomotive to Portland, the Canadian Pacific Royal Hudson 2860. This semi-streamlined Hudson was making a number of trips on BC Rail from Vancouver to Squamish during that era. We know the idea was pitched to have the 2860 join the 4449 on the return trip south to Portland, but we're uncertain exactly how close it came to happening. But in the meantime, our final what if dips more into the fantasy, but this whole video kind of feels like the stuff of Fomer's steam dreams. We look to Spencer, North Carolina at the North Carolina Transportation Museum. This venue hosted the 2012 Heritage Unit Gathering, which brought all 20 of Norfolk Southern's new heritage units together for display. In 2014, it was the host for the Streamliners event, which brought together 27 finely restored covered wagons, including E units, F units, Alcos, and the 611. Now, how could you possibly top that? With steam. A lot of it. This is speculation, but the gathering of steam at Spencer could have been the capstone of the 21st century steam program, as Norfolk Southern had run since 2010. Among the guests would have been the stars of the steam program, Norfolk and Western 611, Nickel Plate Road 765, and the two Southern engines, 4501 and 630. This would have been the first gathering of these excursion stars altogether, a considerable feat in modern times. The speculation goes further, as the lineup would have included a number of engines already known to be trucked in for these kinds of gatherings. Then you would have had larger locomotives being towed in from Roanoke for display. Other invited engines would have been brought in by truck for likely the first time ever. Then bringing in other operable Southern Railway steam engines in by flat car, providing the first major Southern Railway steam reunion. And finally, Union Pacific 844. It's long believed that when the Union Pacific sent their E unit for the Streamliners event, it was a test for them bringing in the real prize, the living legend. Now we have to make it clear, this is all speculation, as no one involved is talking. But a big steam gathering to show the culmination of Norfolk Southern flexing over how much it had done in a short 5 years for steam preservation? It's interesting to think about. Such a gathering in this century seems impossible now, especially with how drastically the preservation and excursion scene has changed in the last 5 years. In the end, we have simulators and photos to make us marvel at the what-ifs that this hobby could present. Or we're all crazy. That's just as likely. Do you have any suggestions for what-if events that almost happened? If this video does well, a second installment might be in order. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this video, comment, like, and subscribe, and tell us more of what you would like to see produced next.